Hello, hello. I want to welcome you all to Your Pricing Matters. It's like we have some changes going on around here, but it is now Your Pricing Matters. And we're here to empower women to profit and to prosper. And so I am super excited today because we are going to have a conversation about time. How many times a week do you ask yourself, or even a day, do you ask yourself or say to yourself, I don't have enough time? And I have been actually watching myself since I've been preparing for this, and it's like it comes up all the time. So I'm super excited to have my guest here. Her name is Lisa Figgins, and she is a spiritual time coach. I think I'm getting that correctly. And we are going to have a new perspective on time because, like it or not, we only get 24 hours each day. We all get the same amount. And so it's really about how we look at it and what we're doing with it. And are we spending it on purpose? And so, hello and welcome. And I'll share a little bit about myself and a little bit of housekeeping along the way as we go. But Lissa, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I love that you're saying pricing matters because I believe time matters as well. And those two things
Absolutely.
go hand in hand, right?
Yes, yes, that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have this conversation. We hear all the time the saying, time is money, and money is time. And so maybe we can tie those things together. But I would love to know like how you got started on this path because this is so unique and I really love, the nuances and the mindset shifts that you bring to this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I wish that I could say I've had this all figured out from forever ago, but I will be the first to admit that I've learned it the hard way over a lot of years. And ultimately, if I could summarize like everything I've learned down into like one phrase, it's that our time struggles, right, are really not because we have a disordered calendar or disordered to-do list. It's a disordered heart. So
Mm,
I'm in a season of life where I'm an empty nest mom. I've been married to my husband for nearly 30 years. I get to coach and podcast and run a business and serve on our women's ministry and do all the things. And I've been there. And I still, like you said, have to catch myself as well, right? Because it's so easy to fall back into those same patterns of saying,
right,
there's never enough time. I don't have enough time. When I have time, if I have time, which
right.
all essentially are looking at this thing that we lack.
Yes.
And the reality is, God gives each and every one of us 24 hours every single day. I believe it's our daily bread, right? And just like
Right.
he laid manna in front of the children of Israel, and they had to trust that what he gave them was enough. What did they do? They looked around too, right? They were complaining that, so and so had it better. They had it better back then, the good old days.
Right,
Someday when we're in the promised land, it'll all be great. And like God was like,
right,
but trust me in the now, like that I'm
right.
giving you what you need. And even when it looked like, I was just actually reading this morning, even when it looked like some of them had gathered more, like, do you ever like watch online somebody's stories or their posts, or
Right.
you're listening to their podcast, you're like, oh my gosh, she just must like be amazing. She's got so much time. And how does she have time for it all? And we
Mhm.
think, right, like somehow this person has the corner on more time. And really the reality is everybody has the same. And I
Right.
really believe it comes down to what we're believing about it. And that then leads to what we're doing with it.
Wow. Well, you have to take us back to this disordered heart. What does that mean? Because I think we can kind of have some thoughts about it, but what does that mean from your
Sure, sure. Well, I always say that you can tell what you value by looking in two places. One, your bank account. So here's where we're going to tie the two together, right?
okay.
Where are you spending your money?
Hmm.
Because it's so interesting. I mean, truth be told, we've been married for nearly 30 years. My husband just received a package, and I'm like, really? You spent money on that? And yet there will be a package coming for me, I'm sure, within the next couple of days that he will say the same thing, right?
Right.
We spend money on what things value, what things matter to us. And
Hmm.
it's so interesting because we can say, I don't have money for that. But then this other opportunity comes up and we're
Hmm.
like, I'm all in, right? Whether it's the
Right.
shoes or whether it's the bag or whether it's, the dinner out or the trip or whatever it is.
Yep.
And the same thing, the second place you can look is in your calendar. Or let's be honest, well, I left my phone in the other room, so I wouldn't be distracted, but I'm going to challenge you, get out your phone, Open up the screen times underneath the settings and look
Uh-oh.
at how much time. Okay. I just released a podcast episode yesterday on my podcast, which is called Redeem Her Time. And I'm going to give you guys this shocking statistic. Okay. At first, it doesn't quite sound so bad. So just hold on. The average person spends 4 hours and 37 minutes a day on their phone. Okay.
4 hours.
4 hours, 37 minutes a day. Now, I get that a lot, we're listening, we're entrepreneurs. Chances are you're using your phone for your business. So you may look at that number and go, 8 hours. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, don't, it's okay. But so say it's just, the 4 hours of the average person. That adds up to an entire day over a week's period of time that you have given to that device. Over a month, it adds up to over 6 days. That's almost an entire week that you've been like, here you go, to I don't even know what, right? Over a year, this is where it gets really shocking. It adds up, and this is average, to over 70 days a year. 70 24-hour periods. Girl, that's over 2 months. And some people are 3 months, 4 months of their life that they have just, handed over to all these other things. So when I say that we have a disordered heart, yeah, I think our heart loves a lot of other things that at the end of the day, let's be honest, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, they really didn't matter. And so when we start to rightly order our heart, first by where we're giving our time, well, actually before that, how we're viewing the time that we have. Because I think that so many of us, we're believing that it's this limited resource. And when something is limited, what do? You do everything you can to contain it and keep it and keep it from getting away. And, right. Because it's like, I have to hold on to this or it's going to be gone. Right. And so I have to just, meagerly kind of parse this out, and there is discernment in all of that to it, but we all get those 24 hours every day. That's nothing of us. I don't know about you, but I didn't do anything to get my 24 hours today. I couldn't save any left over from yesterday. I can't borrow any from tomorrow and say, oh, I'll be good with 22 tomorrow. So let me grab 2 hours today. Right.
Right.
I have to just receive it as a gift, as an abundant gift, trusting that God has given me everything I need. If he thought I needed 25 hours in a day, he would have given it to me. Right. That's never going to change except for daylight savings time, which is our test to see, does it really change our life? No, it doesn't. It maybe feels good for a minute, but yeah. Right. And now I have this abundant gift. And now it's okay. Now that I see this as a gift that's been entrusted to me, that has a bigger purpose beyond just the here and now, or beyond what I feel like in the moment when I pick up my phone or when I get distracted by this thing. Now I'm going to be a wise steward and I'm going to invest it where I'm called to be, which is going to be primarily in 2 places, right? In our business that we're called to build and in the life that we're called to live. And then I'm going to, be much more intentional about where it's going because I see the value behind it.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense. It's scary to think about the number of hours that we're on our devices. And you will have to tell us where to look to find that information, because I think sometimes, because we're not conscious of it, we're like, oh, well, that's other people. I'm not on there that much.
Yeah.
And how do we look to see what?
Okay. Well, I can only speak to iPhones because that's what I have. And like I said, mine is not in front of me because I was trying to be a good steward and not be distracting. But when you go into settings, and then I believe it used to be under general, but I think now it has its own category. It's called screen time. And what's interesting is when you click on it, it gives you all kinds of information. It not only tells you the total number of minutes and hours that you've spent on your phone that day or that week. It also tells you the times of day. It also tells you what the first thing is that you visit when you pick it up. I think that's really telling. It's one thing if you pick up your phone and you're going to read your Bible, but it's another thing if every time you pick up your phone, the first thing you go to is Facebook, right?
Right.
What's that saying about the value? And let's be honest, what happens when we go into the social, scroll hole? It's like a black hole. Right. And so it's really interesting to be able to look at some of those things. And you're right. Be aware. That's the first step, is being aware of where our time is going. And I think we've kind of missed out on this, even when it comes to our money. Let's go back to money. Back when you used to have to write the check or
Hmm.
you like literally had to count out the cash,
Right.
you could see that pile of cash getting smaller, or you could feel what it felt like to hand that over to the store clerk or whatever.
Yep.
And so won't you be much more careful with what you're spending? Right
Mm.
now that we have digital ways that we pay for
Right.
everything, it's not till the credit card statement comes and you're like, oh my gosh, right? That's like our screen time settings on our phone. And I think the same thing is true with our time, right? We
Mhm.
can't see the time that's just kind of getting thrown out, into all these different
Right.
places, and yet it adds up.
Yes, yeah. I actually wanted to share something with you, with everyone, because I did some type of assessment and it was revealing these different things about myself. And some of them were surprising, some not surprising, but I knew I was on the screen a lot, but it's like it was just really revealing to kind of go through this assessment. And it's like, okay, this is taking up much more time than I would like for it to take up. And
Mm,
so it's like I was given like a little exercise to do to kind of center before I go on. But of course, the next morning, I forgot all about the exercise. And I
okay.
went on the first thing that I saw, I just got like it changed my mood.
Mhm.
It's like I got involved in someone else's situation.
Right.
And there was like nothing that I could do about the situation. There was nothing that the person could do about the situation. And I just realized how like it just draws you in and takes you completely off center. What God had for my day, what I had planned for my day is now like moving in a whole different direction. And it's like I was able to stop because I was aware at that time and say, let me just get off of here. But what happens from my perspective is that we just end up kind of in this, we're being pulled this way, we're being pulled that way. Oh, this is sad. Oh, someone's mom passed. It's like, let me give my condolences. Oh, it's somebody's birthday. Happy birthday. And it's like, and then you get into discussions and things that you have no, how do they say, you have nothing in that game,
Right.
but it stirs you up enough like, well, I have to write something about this.
Yeah. And it's
And
amazing how it
yeah,
distracts us. Like, even if they say, even your phone being in the same room with you, which is why I left mine in
mm,
the other room,
right,
distracts you because your brain is literally thinking about what you're missing out on and what's
right,
happening and who needs you and what you're going to find when you get back to it. And it's,
right.
it's so interesting how all of that happens. The same thing is true of, like, you have a bunch of open tabs on your computer.
Oh
Sometimes,
God.
someone shares their screen. This is no judgment to anyone who's listening who has multiple tabs open, but pay attention to, like, really how that feels to see all those tabs. First of all, the last person's screen that I saw with all her tabs open, she
Mhm.
couldn't even figure out which one was which unless she clicked on them all, because they were so close together that there was
Oh,
only a
okay.
little tiny picture and
Okay.
you couldn't read the words. So talk about how much time she was going to spend trying to figure out which tab it was, right? I've
Right.
learned to just close them and then I can open it when I need it to. I can bookmark the ones that I want to find quickly. Right. But back to your thing about your phone. I actually just created a screensaver, because when we pick up our phone is that first choice we have to decide, am
Mhm.
I actually going to push the button? And so right on there, I have a question. And this is a question that I want to share with your audience, because this has literally shifted everything for me and for the women that I work with, who are all busy Christian women, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. They're building life, they're building business.
Mhm.
And so often we run around asking the question, what time is it? And how do you feel when you ask the question, what time is it? I'm curious.
A little bit like I've gotten off track and I need to find out if I'm on track or if I missed something or if
Uh-huh.
if I need to rush
Yeah.
to the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'm behind, like, oh no, I didn't get this done in time. Here's where I need to be. I should be here, all those things, right? Starts bringing up the angst. We start getting on the hamster wheel. So here's the question I'm going to challenge you and everyone who's listening to start asking. What is it time for?
Mm.
How does that make you feel when I when
Okay.
I say that question? Like, what comes up for you when you think of the question, what is it time for?
It almost makes me have a pause.
Mm,
It's like I have to think like,
okay.
oh, what is it time for? And it feels like I'm looking forward to something good.
Oh, wow. I love that. I've never had somebody say that, but I love
Yeah.
that. Like, because it's focusing on the bigger purpose behind the time that's in front of you. So instead of chasing the lack, I should
Mhm.
be here, I should be doing this, I'm behind, all of that. It's looking at the abundance that I already have and
Right.
what is the purpose behind this. And then giving our full focus to that, right? And
Yeah.
so I actually just created a screensaver that has that question right on it. It says,
Okay.
reminder, what is it time for? And you have two choices, phone or no phone. And so
Oh, okay.
because I think you're right, we have great intentions. We could even,
Mhm.
go on with the greatest intention to go on and, and give that birthday message or go into that Facebook group or whatever
Right.
it is. And then we forget and we're all over the place. So I figure
Mhm.
at least if we have
Mhm.
that visual trigger,
Right.
and I will make sure that I give the link to you by the time we're done, so that way people can
Yes, please.
take advantage of that. Because yes, that right there could give you back hours in your day.
Wow. Yeah, and I think the other part that I can share, not with that particular story that I was sharing, but just getting on, I don't know how many different times, getting into this distraction, that distraction, the other distraction, and then getting off and realizing that I didn't even do what I went on there to do, which was
Right,
business related,
right, right.
So it's
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. And you could be falling into this right now. Someone listening could be falling into this right now. When we
Mhm.
start feeling the guilt around what we
Mhm.
should have done,
Right.
that's not going to serve us at all. Right.
Right.
So it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, I've already spent that time. Unlike money, I can't make more. I can't get it back. Like it's already
Mhm.
spent. Now I'm just going to ask the question, what is it time for the time in
Right.
front of me? And you're focusing on the value of the time, right?
Mhm.
Which is the purpose behind it. And I truly believe that, especially as business owners, we need to have healthy boundaries around our time.
Mhm.
And this is
Right.
another thing that I think sometimes we push up against, right? Because we think boundaries are selfish and that's like telling somebody no, or like, keeping them at
Mhm.
arm's distance or whatever. And think of your time, think of like a garden, right? Like if
Mhm.
you are planting a garden, if you're a smart gardener, you're going to put a boundary around it. At the very least, you're going to you can tell where the
Right.
grass stops and where the garden starts, right? But
Mhm.
most of us have critters that live near us. And so if we don't put some kind of a tangible boundary, they are going
Right.
to come in there and take over. And what really matters that's inside does not have the space to grow. And
Mm.
so looking at our boundaries around our time are not selfish to the people outside. It's actually
Mhm.
serving to what's inside, to what
Mhm.
it is I've already said has value. So when it's time to work, I am saying that the work I'm doing, whether it's connecting with this client or creating this post or podcast or sending this email or following
Mhm.
up with this prospect or right, working on my offer or my program or whatever, like that has value. And because it has value, I'm willing to put some boundaries around it, which
Mm.
means saying no to things like our devices, saying no to the random thoughts that pop up. I should go change the laundry. I got to add this to my grocery list. And then we have to go do it in the moment or we'll forget. And even telling other people, like, this is the time that I'm working. And I think that's,
Mhm.
especially for those of us who work from home, where it
Mhm.
feels like we're available all the time. This is something we have to be, mindful of with ourselves and with other people
Right.
is, if I went to an office or I had a boutique, right, I would have clear business hours that were on the
Mhm.
on the window, and everyone else would know this is the time I'm here. So they're not going to be calling me and asking me to do something else, and I'm not
Right.
going to be wandering off, right, doing other things because this is the time I'm showing up to that. And then the
Mhm.
other day, I showed up to my friend's boutique, and she was closed, which is fine. She didn't have to apologize to me that she wasn't there because it was very clear these are her business hours, and that was a day that she was doing stuff with her family or taking care of her home or taking care of herself, and I just
Mhm.
had to come back another day, right? Like, so yes, permission and direction to put some healthy boundaries around
Mhm.
your time.
Yeah, I think that's really important because it is challenging, especially working from home. So any tips to make that easier? Because, it's like you see the pile of laundry, or you see the kitchen needs something, or maybe you need to vacuum, or all of these different things that are there. And then of course, if you live with others, they may be saying, well, hey, it's time for lunch, and hey, it's time for this, and or can you help me with this? How do you kind of put those boundaries around that time? For
Yeah.
yourself even, the
Right. Yes.
self-distraction.
Totally, totally. Well, the very simplest way to do it is to ask that question before you give your time to something. What is it time for? Right? That's the simplest way if you're just like, I
Mhm.
just need like an in the moment thing to do. But, I truly believe there's a difference in living by design and living by default. right? If we are trying to build a business by default, my goodness, what is going to happen? It's going to be all over the place. We're going to have people coming and going and, or maybe people not coming because we're so inconsistent and there's nothing really solid there. And yet I think we crash land into Monday and we just go with the flow and hope we end up somewhere good by the end of the week. And, and then on the weekend go, well, I don't even know what happened this week. So, I'll try to make the best of the weekend and then crash land into Monday again. And so I'm a big proponent of identifying what matters and then laying out what your week looks like before it starts. And I teach something called an ideal week time template. Notice I did not say perfect week because there's no such thing as a perfect week, right? But when here are the main things that matter, here's what I'm making time for, and here's when I'm putting that time, what we can call a time block. I teach a little bit different way of doing time blocking than a traditional way. I think it's just really a to-do list that most people do on their Google Calendar. But anyway, then you've got some kind of a framework to work from, right? You've got some kind of a guide. And I'm a big proponent of having not tiny little every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but little bigger spacious blocks. And there needs to be time every day to fill up because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
So what does your body, mind, spirit need? Right. And then there are times to pour out. And depending on what season of life you're in, you've got, probably some family members that you're pouring into, maybe friends, you have a household that you're caring for. And then you also have a business and you may even have a ministry or volunteer work that you do or things like that. And so knowing when is it time to refill, when is it time to pour out, and then when it is a pour out time, is this a time that I'm pouring out into my business? Great. Then my household things can wait, right? Because this is going to end at a certain time. And now I can walk out that door and guess what? The laundry is still there. The dishes are still there. My husband is still there, right? Now, when something comes up, we pause, we discern, is this an invitation or distraction? And that's where you can use the, what is it time for? Yes. Will my husband sometimes just walk in the room, not having any idea that I have a plan for the time in front of me? Of course. And so then in that moment, I get to decide, I'm hearing what his need is. I'm thinking about what I had in front of me and I'm able to discern where my time needs to go. And if now is not the time, it's okay to say to him, you know what? I will definitely help you with that. I will be finished with this at 3:00. And then let's work on that together, right? So we can still honor the person or honor the request or honor whatever it was that came in without feeling like we have to respond in the moment. And that even includes texts on your phone, notifications from Facebook, the emails in your inbox, because every time you redirect your focus, it takes 20 full minutes for your focus to go back to what you were doing. So when we're this all the time, even if nobody else is around us, it's just us and our computer clicking on tabs and going from one thing to the next, right? We're wasting a lot of time just not knowing what it's time for.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you made some really good points there. And the time to fill up, is that how you put it? And
I call them refills and pourouts.
Refills and pourouts. I think that's a really powerful distinction.
Yeah.
That sometimes we need to take that moment, when we ask, what is it time for, to say, is it time to refill or is it time to pour out?
And one of the things I teach about too, I think a lot of us know we should have some kind of a morning routine, and we need that time before we jump into our day, not picking up our phones first, those kinds of things. But I also teach having an evening refill. Because just like your phone, by the end of the day, it needs to be plugged in to be recharged, or it's not going to be working for you the next day.
Right.
How many of us were either working on our computer up until bedtime, or we're working on laundry, or something in the kitchen, or this, that, and the other thing, or we're just binging or scrolling? That is not really refilling. And then we wonder why we drop in bed exhausted and we can't go to sleep. Because, our mind and our body has, been going up until the moment we dropped in bed. So I'm going to encourage you to also have refills in the evening, even if it's just, 15 minutes, 20 minutes before you want to be in bed, to start putting everything else away and stop doing and just be and see the difference that makes.
Okay. Are there any particular things that you would suggest during that time?
You know what? That's where it gets to be unique to what is refilling for you. Because something that's refilling to one person may not be refilling to someone else, and that's okay. I'm going to strongly encourage that it not involve a screen. because most of the time, I mean, there are a few exceptions, but most of the time, the things that we're doing on our screens, like you said, are just scrolling or binging or things like that aren't refilling. So maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's having a cup of tea. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's taking a bath. Maybe it's just sitting on the couch and having face-to-face conversation with the people that you love and share a house with, that you've been passing like ships, maybe it's doing some, skincare. Maybe it's, like praying through the next day, or examining the day that you just came from. There are a lot of just little things that we can do that are not producing something for someone else, right? Or something for our business, but just being and refilling.
Nice. Yeah, I think those are some really great examples that give people a chance to think of, like, okay, what else could I be doing with this time? And,
Right.
what that could look like and what that could feel like. Because as you mentioned, some of those things, it just feels like, okay, this is a calming way to consider ending my day.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean you can't ever have family night or like date night where like, hey, we're going to watch this or whatever. Like I do that too, but it's not the norm. It's not the every night default that this is just, where, how I end my day. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've given us some really practical tips. What are some of the biggest challenges, outside of, the screen time and the social media? What are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing us busy women with their
Right?
time?
I call them the shuns.
Okay.
Expectations, what other people think you should do.
Okay.
Obligations, what you think you should be doing for others. And then
Uh-huh.
distractions, which can include all the shiny objects and the devices and things like that, and I think
Okay.
especially as business, owners, and those of us who are building, programs, of course, we've got these things we want to price. That's why we're working with you. We can tend to look at what everybody else is doing, right? And they may not be bad things, but just we listen to this podcast, we read this blog post, we see this, Facebook or Instagram, feed or whatever, and it just becomes all these things I should be doing. And it gets overwhelming, right? And we can get really busy and distracted by all the things. And so then we're not really doing much of anything well enough to really see the fruit, AKA the results that we want, right? And so it's just, what is it that I'm called to do, right? And what am I called to do in this season? I think that's really important as well. We're recording this as we're kind of in this transition between summer and fall. I've been seeing a lot of posts on Facebook of back to school stuff already. And I'm like, really? They're going back to school the first week of August? And maybe you've got a couple more weeks, or maybe you're already there, or maybe you have an empty nest like me, and it's, you don't have kids in school, but it still is that feeling of summer is winding down. And, so paying attention to, as I step into fall, what are the things that really matter that I'm committing to making time for? And in order to do that, there's going to have to be a little bit of cleaning out. There's a difference between organizing and simplifying in your home, right? Organizing is just making it all pretty, putting it all in these nice boxes with labels and, and tags and all of that. Simplifying is actually removing the stuff that you no longer need. And it's either going in the trash, or it's getting donated, or it's going to be put in the room that it actually belongs to. And I think the same thing has to happen, when we think about our time. What are the things I've been giving time to? And is this still the season for me to be doing that? Are there some things I need to remove so I can create space for these things that do matter? So that way they're not being life taking over business or business taking over life, right?
Right. Yeah, I like the difference between, you said, organizing and simplifying. And I'm actually doing some I guess simplifying, if you will. Someone suggested Marie Kondo's book, and it's been really, really a kind of mind shifting, life shifting type of experience. And going through, and you gather everything from your entire house that's the same. And so I've been able to do a couple of the levels. And so each weekend I'm kind of putting together time, but it does create a level of spaciousness, I guess. Yeah.
And first you start with that awareness of how much of this one thing do I really have? Like, it's like with our looking at our phone, how much of my time is really going to this? Wow. Now what's the value of this? And how much of this do I want to keep? And how much am I going to let go? And here's where I feel like time management is a myth, because we can't manage time. Time is always going. It's never changing. It's never going to pause. It's never going to stop or slow down. It really doesn't go faster, even though we say
Right.
time flies. It does not. We're just trying to hold it down and try and keep everything under control. It feels like a game of whack-a-mole because we think we put one thing in and the next thing goes. And that's why I used to follow all the time management advice out there that told me organize your to-do list and organize your time blocks and organize your timekeepers. And
Right.
it gave an illusion of things being under control for a time. But then life would always happen and the law of entropy kicked in. Things go from order to disorder. And so just like with your home, just organizing it doesn't really fix the problem of all the stuff that's in your home until
Right.
you actually, remove what doesn't matter. And it's amazing how you can see all the amazing things you have when you get rid of all the other stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, I love all of these tie-togethers between the space and the time and the money.
Mm.
I think there's so much connection between all of them that we don't often think about. And so with your experience, like what are some of the changes like the people that you work with coaching see in their lives?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest ones I hear often is that they don't feel the guilt because so many people, it's like when you're working on your business, you feel guilty that you're not spending time with your family. And when you're with
Right.
your family, like in your head, you're like thinking about the things you could or should be doing for your business or whatever else it is. Right. And so it allows you to be present and it allows you to show up for the people and things that matter instead of either A, being half present or B, just not showing up for them at all and they're getting leftovers, right? Or your business is getting leftovers because you've been, giving so much more time in other areas. And so really like getting rid of that guilt, feeling the spaciousness, feeling like not feeling the angst of like I'm behind all the time because you're asking the question, what is it time for? And so I'm pausing to reflect on what matters and, and what's happening. And just the whole belief that women start, like when they start believing, instead of believing I don't have time or there's never enough time, when they start telling themselves, I have time. I have people tell me I'm in their head and because they hear, I say this in the podcast all the time, you have time, right? The enemy, I think, wants to keep us distracted and busy. And so like, I don't have time leads to my time is not enough, leads to I'm not doing enough, leads to I'm not enough.
Right.
And goodness, that doesn't take us anywhere. So when we start believing I have time, I start valuing the time I have. Now I'm more intentional with it, right? And then I can know where to invest it, and then I get more specific when I work with clients, right? And so we look at their business time and say, okay, what are the important tasks that need to happen in your business? And what's the frequency? Is this a daily thing? Is this a weekly thing, a monthly thing, a quarterly thing? And then we create, those workflows. So it's not all up in your head. You're not, remembering some things and dropping other things and, and all of that. And so we get into a lot more nitty gritty, but kind of that higher level is just, I have time. I have plenty of time and I'm not behind.
Okay.
That's life-giving right there, right?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that you mentioned the guilt because I think that is a time drain. It's never productive to be in those spaces where it's like, oh, I should be doing this or could be doing that, or I wish I had done that. It's like, it's really not moving you forward. It's like keeping you kind of stuck. And so,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
freeing that allows extra time and, like mental energy, creativity, all of those things.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the whole idea that this problem is not in my calendar. The problem is in here, right? There's a connection between the mind and the heart, right? And this is where I need to go first. And then that's going to overflow into what I do. And so then I can, pick up the time management tools, that more traditional tools and use those things, right?
Right. So how do you suggest connecting more with our heart? Because I think a lot of us probably spend a lot of time in our heads.
You're right. You're right. Being really intentional about those refill times. I think that's where you start. Because when the first thing you do, you get up is you pick up your phone and checking the weather leads to checking the news, leads to checking Facebook, leads to checking your email, leads to, who has time to think thoughts anymore? Your brain is already cluttered with the thoughts everyone else wants you to think. And, now you're either going in a million directions or your head's all spun up and, because your emotions and stuff. But what if you just had time that you were just quiet in the morning? For me, it's spending time with the Lord and, and reading scripture and praying. But again, still even in that, sometimes just being silent and not doing anything allows us to be present to what's really going on, what we're really feeling and thinking, and that kind of thing. So I think that's really key. I also am a big believer in having a vision for where you're going. So often it's easy to get blinders on and just be from one day to the next and 1 week to the next and 1 month to the next. And it's like riding a bike. You don't pedal with your head down the whole time, right? Because then look up, true story, ran into the back of a parked car when I was not. I mean, it was long, many years ago now, right? But I wasn't, looking up where I was going. I was just focusing on where my feet were, right? And I think that's also true here. We can just be 1 foot in front of the next and just trying to make it through the day, make it through the week, make it through the month, and then look up and be like, whoa, where am I? Or why am I not where I wanted to be, or where I thought I'd be, or where I thought I wanted to go? And so having the bigger picture and taking time to do that. I have a process I walk through called the With God Life and Business Framework, where we get that bigger picture. And then that helps guide your time in your quarter, in your month, in your week, in your day, right? In the time that's in front of you, because bigger picture where you're going. So taking the time to look ahead, I think, is another way we start getting into our heart and not just where my feet are going and what my hands are doing.
Right. Yeah, I love the things that you were just sharing. It just made me think of, be still and know.
Right.
And just some of these phrases that we sometimes could pass over or take for granted, but it's like, it's right there, in the Bible, be still and know.
Yeah.
And the only way we can hear and get those kind of next right steps. And when you talk about vision, without a vision, the people will perish. And it's really is keeping that bigger. So I guess sometimes I call it like a North Star. Like if you get off track, how can you get back on track? It's like, okay, what's my North Star? It's like, where am I going?
Right. And we all know that we're not going to live forever. We all know that one day, right? And behind me, I actually have some jars. I don't know if you can see them. They have little marbles in them. I have 100 marbles between the 2 jars. One of them is the years I've already lived, which is now 51. So last year I passed the halfway point. The other one is 50. And, and so each year on my birthday, I move a marble from the one jar to the other, right? Actually, the one, I take that back. There's one that I leave sitting on the desk right in front of it. That's the time that I'm in right now. That's the only time I can do something about, right? And so it's that reminder as I look back at the years and the days, the months and the weeks I've already lived, I can't go back and change them. There were great things in there. There were hard things in there. I can only be grateful for how they have brought me to where I am and who I am right now. And then as I look at that jar with the years yet to live, I don't know what they're going to have, right? I could be fearful of it or worried or, uncertain or trying to guess at it. But instead I choose to have faith and say, God knows. He knows what those hold, right? And the only time I can do something about is that one that I'm in, and being present to it and being the best steward of that as I can, knowing that, it's that time is going to pass and that marble will be moving and the next one, right? So it's that perspective on time because it's not something we can touch. So for me, I need those tangible ways to kind of make it something real and feel it.
That is a beautiful visual. It's like, I like that concept. And talk to us a little bit about the word stewardship. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
When we talk about time.
So a steward is someone who cares for something on behalf of someone else. And here's what I love about the definition of stewardship, is investing it so that it expands the assets of the owner. Like you think about, so in the Bible, Jesus told the parable of the servants, right? We often call it the parable of the talents. I call it the parable of the servants because I think it was more about what their heart was versus what they had. Because one guy, got 5 talents, and one guy got 2 talents, and one guy got 1. But 1 talent is worth about 20 years' wages. So all of them had a lot, right? Even the guy with 1 that we often feel bad for, right? But the difference was 2 of them by faith stewarded it. They went and invested it to invest in the master's kingdom, and it increased his kingdom, right? The other guy, out of fear, what did he do? He went and buried it. He was afraid it was going to get away from him. He wanted to keep it all to himself. There was fear about what was going to happen when the master returned and all of that. And so the master never told them, at least we don't hear in the story, what his intention was for them. But when he returns, we can see based on his response, to the two that had stewarded and had invested on his behalf to expand it, they heard, well done, good and faithful servant. Like, come to me and let me give you more, right? Because you're building my kingdom. And that other one, right? Like, what he had was taken away from him, and he was not welcomed into the master's presence. And, he was trying to manage it, keep it under control, keep it from getting away, keep someone from robbing it, like keep it safe. Right. The other ones were stewarding it. They recognized it didn't belong to them, but that the purpose was for them to not only care for it, but also to grow it on behalf of someone else. And so, yeah, I mean, that can apply to our money as well, right? And just realizing even if we have done the work to, get the paycheck, that ultimately, none of it goes with us. And ultimately, it's only because of what God's given us the ability to do that we can even earn that money. And so how do I steward my money? How do I steward my time? How do I steward my talents, in recognizing it's not about me, it's not for me, and, it doesn't end with me.
Wow, that is really beautiful and powerful. And
it takes the burden off too, right? Yeah. Like that it all depends on you, and that you have to have everything just right, when no, I'm just holding it with open hands and then doing what I'm called to do with it.
Yes. Yeah. I have, there's something I want to come back to with that, with what you just shared. But Arnetta joined us and she was just saying that's good. It's more about their hearts and their talents. And so that's so
right.
rich. Yes. Yeah. So it's the thing that you just stirred up in me is perfectionism.
Ooh.
And, like you gave this great definition of stewardship, which I think puts a different lightness to it, that it's not ours. And it's not, something that we can control. Like you say, when we try to manage it, it's like we bury it, we goof it up, we put our fears on top of it or what have you. But one of the things that I see is perfectionism, that becomes kind of the goal, that we think we can somehow make things perfect, but there is no such thing. So how does that tie into our time in terms of what you've experienced?
Yeah. Well, I think you've said it right there. There is no such thing as perfect. I mentioned that when we talked about the ideal week. There's no such thing as a perfect week, but I can have, a plan for something. And then, I hold those plans loosely in the right ways. I protect things with those healthy boundaries. Right. But I also realize I don't know everything that's going to happen in my week, or even in my day, or even in the next hour. And so there's where that trust comes in, of knowing that God knows those things. And when I don't just lean on my own understanding, but in all my ways acknowledge him, then he directs my path. He directs my time. He directs the outcome of it. And, when we truly believe that he is the one that is in control of it all, I can't do things to mess it up. It's not like all of a sudden God's like, oh no, now she did this, and now my whole plan is thrown off, right? Like, nope, that's not how it works, right? My CEOs and I, we have a scripture that we focus on each week, and this week it's as high as the heavens are above the earth. So are my thoughts than your thoughts. And I was sitting outside the other day looking up at the clouds and thinking of that verse, and I was just like, wow, those heavens are really, 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 really far up there. And that's where I trust. Yes, I will mess up. Yes, there are times when I get distracted. Yes, there are times when I waste time. Yes, there are times when, I think something's going to be a great investment of time and it's not. That doesn't mean that, all is lost, right? Because there's a bigger picture behind it all. There's a bigger purpose behind it all. And and I'm just a part of it. And, can then just pray for that discernment for, the next decision I'm making.
Right. And I think one more thing, before we kind of wrap up, but going back to the perfectionism, I guess. And it's like, I was actually working on a project, finishing up a book that I was working on, and it was like 90 to 95% done. So it's like, okay, this should only take, about 3, maybe 4 hours or so to get, these little tweaks or whatever, have it ready for print. And it ended up taking pretty much the whole day. How do you speak to things where you've underestimated? Because I do that as well, as underestimate how long things will take, which means that whatever was planned for that other time is now not getting done. And so
Sure,
is
sure.
it that same question, or how do you address that?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing we do is we have to go to the point that my value is not found in the fact that I checked off all my boxes today.
Right.
Right. Because yeah, or like what I got done today. I've even told my husband, don't ask me, what did you do today? Like tell me about your day. What did you focus your time on is way different than what did you get done? Because
Right.
then it makes me feel like, oh, maybe I didn't do enough. Or, yes,
Right.
I had something yesterday that I wanted to complete by the end of yesterday. And there were some other things that I discerned and were needing some time. And so when I started today, I was able to say, okay, then here's where I can give this time. And I just shifted, my plan, because we are going to have those unexpected things, which is why when we just try to manage it and keep it all under control, we are playing whack-a-mole all day long because things like that happen. And let's be honest, when your book is out in the world, is it going to matter to anyone, including yourself, that it took you 6 hours longer than you thought?
Right.
No, right? Like it's going to be out there and doing its job, right? So I think
Right.
kind of stepping back and going, okay, really big picture, does this matter?
Okay.
And giving ourselves grace first,
Yeah.
and also then giving others grace too, knowing that they're dealing with the same limits of time that we are as well, and we can have great intentions and we can have great plans and we can think this is how it's going to work, and it may or may not, and that's okay. That's okay.
Right.
There's a bigger purpose behind it than just checking that box.
Yes, yes. I think your thoughts on time are so refreshing. So I appreciate that. And we've got some people here. I don't know if anyone has any questions before we wrap up, but if you are here, we are on the platform of StreamYard. And if you're watching, it's like there's probably a little indicator that says you can allow us to see your name. It's like that's optional. But if you'd like for us to address you by name, it's like we'd love to see you. But if you have any comments or any questions for Lissa, to please let us know. And I wanted to share another comment from Arnetta, who says, yes, amen. Having patience in that process is the key.
Yeah.
And so I think you've given us a lot, with patience and with purpose and ways to.
Well, think about the alternative. When we start rushing around, number one, we don't feel very good. I
Right.
literally finally got a diagnosis because I felt like I had a ball in my throat all the time for over a year. And I finally promised my friends that I'd go get it checked out. I got scopes. They tested for acid reflux, make sure you're chewing enough, drinking enough, all the things. And finally, my doctor sat me down. I remember him looking at me from across the, he's sitting in the chair. I'm sitting on the little, table thing or whatever. And he's like, Lissa, there is nothing physically wrong with you. There is not a ball in your throat. We've already scoped it. There's nothing there. You have what's called hystericus globus. And he just kind of smiled. And I was like, what's that?
Right.
Globus is the sensation of a ball. And hystericus, and he goes like this, right? He's crazy. And he goes, that's where we get the word hysterectomy, because we thought that women were going crazy in this season of, midlife. And he, that was a wake-up call for me, that my busyness and my rushing and my trying to get everything right and check all my boxes and, and multitask by putting everything in at the same time and trying to make it all perfect was literally affecting everything, and my body was keeping the score. And I knew my heart and my mind, felt disconnected, felt the guilt, felt the overwhelm, felt the whatever, but I just kept pushing through it because I'm a go-getter, right? And I got things to do and people to see and a business to build. And so it wasn't until that, and I was like, wow. So it can affect every area of our life. And also it leads to a lot of mishaps and mistakes, right? So yes, pause, slow down, pay attention to the purpose, give yourself grace, and then come back to say, what is it time for? And then be present with the time that you have is really going to shift everything.
Wow, that is so powerful. A wonderful way for us to wrap up for today. But tell us, how can we get in contact with you? It's like we love to get the information about the screensaver.
Yes, I'm so glad that you came back to that. I was just thinking of that. So because this is happening in real time, in just a couple of weeks, I'm doing a challenge called the Find the Time Challenge. How many of us have said, if I could find the time, when I find the time, if only I could find the time, then I'd, right? We're always looking for more time. And so we're going to look at 4 truths that are going to help you to uncover the time you've been praying for. And again, I come at it from a very different perspective. It's not about managing it. It's about stewarding it. It's not about organizing it. It's about simplifying it. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less. It's not about productivity. It's about purposivity. And so anyway, when you register for the challenge, you get 2 free gifts. One of them is the screensaver, which you're going to love. The second one is a guide it's called 4 Ways to Get Back Hours in Your Day as an Entrepreneur. And so I call out 4 different things. And one of them, like I already shared, is your device and how often you're checking things, whether it's your phone or your computer and things like that. So you can go to redeemhertime.com/time. And that is the link to register for free for the challenge. And I'll send those 2 gifts right away. And then I would say the other place to find me is on the Redeem Her Time podcast, which I'm there every week hanging out and sharing about truths around our time. And then what do we do with this? And how do we not live like the world around us that's on the hamster wheel? So you can find Redeem Her Time podcast on any platform. Follow the show and be part of the conversation that we have afterwards inside the community. And the link to that is all in the show notes of the podcast.
Okay. So tell me again, Redeem Her Time /
time. redeemhertime.com/time. Yep.
Okay. So that is where we can get the sign up for the
free challenge, which will get you the free guide and the screensaver as well.
All right. And I am going to show that. There we go. And the podcast is of the same name. I wasn't able to get it all in there, but follow us at redeemhertime.com/time to take advantage of the challenge that's coming up, and Redeem Her Time podcast on all of the different platforms. So
yes,
we absolutely love that. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for joining us, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. We appreciate you. And if you do have any questions, thoughts, or comments or anything, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I think I didn't really introduce myself, but I'll do that now. But my name is Mickey Wright. I'm a pricing strategist, and I help sometimes overworked, very smart, talented women who may be undercharging to level up and charge what they're worth without fear and without guilt. And so as I mentioned, I'm working on a new book, and it will give you the first 3 steps to getting started with raising your prices. It's a power pricing fast action guide. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. So be on the lookout, and I'll keep you posted with how you can get instant access to that. So coming soon. And you can visit me at Mickey at beautysuperstars.com/keys to get my free pricing cheat sheet. So if you are thinking about raising your prices, haven't done it in a couple years, have, every time you think about it, you get a little queasy. People ask you what you charge, and you're like, I don't want to tell them. Sign up now, grab it. Free gift, and stay on the lookout for the book. So again, Lissa, thank you. This has been so eye-opening and heart-opening, I think.
I hope so, right? I wanted to shift your heart first,
Absolutely.
Your mindset, and then it's going to start shifting your calendar and your to-do list. And no longer feel like you're chasing a clock or a calendar or a checklist, because when you know what it's time for, and you have that intentional plan that I help women create for their life and for their business, then it doesn't just all go on one big list of should do's, and you've got time to invest in the people and things that matter most.
Yes, that is very, very beautiful and powerful. So thank you again. It's like, thanks everyone for joining us for Your Pricing Matters, and your pricing matters because you matter. So lots of things that matter. So take great care, everyone. We will see you on the next time. So take good care. Bye-bye.